Oh, would you look at what just landed? Here's a look at the brand new Star Race NASA 55th Anniversary Apollo 11 moon landing, Neil Armstrong. In celebration of the 55th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing, Star Race introduces the 1/6 scale Neil Armstrong in authentic Apollo 11 Lunar Module Eagle X A7L spacesuit. The figure is fitting tribute to one of the most significant moments in human history, as Neil Armstrong famously declared, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." This meticulously crafted figure embodies the spirit of exploration and discovery that defined the Apollo era. Orbiting around a February to March 2025 release. Just before, of course, we get a close of this early look at the Neil Armstrong first moon landing figure, I'd like to thank the folks over at Star Race that provided this sample. Yeah, this figure is going to be dropping any time now. The price that he's going for online, at least in Canadian prices, around $471. You'd be a little less than that, obviously, if you're shopping in US dollars. Taking, though, of course, the tape measure, let's see how tall Neil actually stands. The answer to that is about 11.5 inches in height, or about 29.5 centimeters tall. Along with Armstrong, the figure does come included with an oval-shaped display stand. It makes no, though, mention of NASA, but there's more than enough representation of that certainly on the suit. What I find, though, interesting is that they print Neil Armstrong along the top of the base and not choosing to put it on the front of the placard. Essentially, though, when you do eventually put Neil on top of the display base, he sadly, though, is going to be covering over his own name. Does have, of course, the adjustable neck piece. The neck attaches. There's a rectangular piece section right there, and, of course, a rectangular peg, matching the two shapes together. And, of course, you also got yourself the little curved piece that the figure's going to sit on top of. We'll, in fact, do that right now. Now, see, right now, he actually just says Armst, cutting off his name. The figure does also come included with an instruction booklet. It isn't so much, though, an instruction booklet as an instruction sheet. The front side of it shows the differences between the two. The one that was provided, though, by Star Race is the Deluxe version, which is also going to come included with a flag and soil sampling device. If you opt not to go with that direction, you can also go with a more simpler, more effective route, a cost-effective route of getting the normal version that's only going to come included with the hammer. It does you as well tell you down below how to add the Snoopy cap that we'll be also talking about in a second. But on the back of it, the more important steps, how to include and how to install the backpack and how to also install the camera on the front of his suit. Down below that, it also shows you as well how to swap out the hands, as he has normal, regular human hands and space gloves also as well. There's a fair bit of terrain to cover. Starting first, though, let's have a look at the American flag. Now, the American flag, the way that they've done this, though, is, first of all, it's a metal post. But not only is it just a metal post going this way, but it actually bends along the top here as well. So this part of the flag actually sits along the top of the post, so it makes the flag always erect. Stop that. On the side, though, they've also added a little linklet ring, so this can actually be brought up as well. Not that it would necessarily relax the flag, but it's just the way that they've actually attached it to the side, so it's always going to stay in place. It's printed on both sides, the stars, the stripes. Very nicely done. Let's put that off to the side. Of course, the figure does have the means to hold that also in his hands. I guess also while we're talking about hands, the figure does also come include, first of all, relaxed hands on the ends of his sleeves right now. If you choose to have him holding something, though, Neil also has the available option of having gripping hands, too. So if you want to have him holding the flag, if you want to have him holding the soil sample, or also maybe as well the hammer, these would be the hands for doing the job. What's interesting, though, is the way they've handled the hands, because the figure also comes included with just regular skin hands. These would not be the hands that, obviously, if he's out in the middle of space, he'd want to be using. But the thing that's kind of interesting, though, the way they handled the hands, is if you look at Neil Armstrong here, instead of actually just deciding to remove the glove piece, which you can, what you actually do, though, instead is you take this entire piece off. If you look at the inside of this, see how there's a circular hole? That hole is actually going to sit on what would normally be the regular human hand pegs. And basically that just plugs in place. When you do choose to have different gloved hands, for example, what you need to kind of do, though, is, well, you can take the sleeve off. I try not to do that if I don't have to. But you have to pry this piece off. And it's not, of course, the easiest thing to do, especially on camera, but you're just going to detach it like that. So you have now a glove hand removed. If you want to then have him holding something, you're going to have to use this piece right here. If you want to have him just with human hands, I keep saying human hands, but if you want to have him with skin hands, you would then use those pegs instead. Does that make any sense? I hope that certainly makes sense. But if you want to have him gripping anything, you're going to want to keep this peg still in place. Plug that onto the end of the glove. You kind of want to then go around and fix the sleeve. And then from there, you're going to attach it back onto this peg. So let's just say right now, he's not in the moon right now, or he's not on the moon. Just going to detach that, and then we're going to take a regular hand, and we're going to plug it onto the peg. I suppose this was a smart way for them to go about doing this, as opposed to always having to worry about, to have the glove, I guess it could have also, in theory, attached onto the peg, but I think they wanted to make it probably a little bit more secure, especially if he's holding the weight of the flag. So that's what he looks like just with his regular hand. And again, if you want to have him with the gloved hand, you just would detach that, and then you would take this piece right here. And don't worry, you can always fix the sleeve later. Plug it onto that peg that we were just talking about, and sort of then just fix the sleeve. Pretty clever the way they've done that. They've done also something similar when it comes to his feet as well. Now, when you get him out of the box, he already has his moon shoes on. He does, though, have an option of just regular boots, though, too. And it kind of works the same way as the gloves. So you can detach the boots, and the boots have their own independent peg. See, there's the ball joint inside there, and that's what the moon boots look like. If you want to have just regular boots, for example, you want to make sure you got the facing the right way in. You will then see how each of them also have their own peg. That's going to also plug in place. So you can have the difference of just the regular white boots or also the moon booties instead. I just want to make sure, of course, you plug them all the way in. So again, that's one way that they've done it to work around the idea of having different footwear, different gloves. Kind of clever. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of his other accessories before we start to get this guy dressed up for space. The figure does come included with a soil sampling tool. Now, I believe this, again, is only available in the deluxe version of him. So basically, he'll be scooping up the samples, carrying around in his hand. While the flag, though, is all done in metal, this is actually just cast in silver plastic. Looks good, though. He does also come included with a chipping away hammer. So you've got the front of the hammer. You've got the pick on the back of the hammer. You can also carry those also as well around with him. He does also come included with a Snoopy cap. Now, the thing about the Snoopy cap, I had some issues, to be honest, with this. If you look at the instructions, I'm just going to bring back the sheet here for a second. Technically, you could, first of all, detach Neil Armstrong's head from the rest of his body. This was already an issue I had. There was a lot of resistance trying to take the head off because I felt like there was nothing really allowing this thing to come loose. For all intents and purposes, when it comes to the Snoopy cap, that's the term, by the way, that they've given it. It actually is, if you look at the cap, the inside of it has actually the earpieces, and the earpieces have the mic. So you could detach these if you want to, and in the instructions, they actually indicate that you could put the earpieces against his ear, not that they'll actually hold. There's nothing really keeping them in place. There's nothing really to prevent them falling off. If anything, it's just a removable piece. Unfortunately, though, when it comes to getting the cap on his head, these, by the way, there's like a little, see, there's an elastic strap right there. So what you'll do is you'll take the little earpieces, and you have to take the mic part and slide it just below that elastic strap. So essentially it's going to look like that. Every time I've tried, though, to take the cap and put it on his head, because he wears the cap and then he wears the clear dome over top of that. I've noticed, though, I had a real hard time getting this on top. Now, one of the reasons probably why they recommend that you remove the head first is when you do eventually put the cap on his head, this strap on this side has to loop around his chin and has to feed then through the other side, basically make it tight. Now, one workaround to that, and I found doing this was a little bit easier, take these pieces off altogether, and you'll find it's actually a lot easier to get it on top of his head. It's also helpful, too, that it's made of fabric. Now, while I can't get the head to get actually loose from the rest of his body, you can kind of tuck the strap underneath, and he wears the hat just as well. Yes, it doesn't have, unfortunately, the little communication earpieces. I guess you could probably tuck them in underneath. I feel like almost they probably should have just kept them as permanently adhered. Maybe they could have glued them on inside of the cap or just sewn them in so that you wouldn't have to have these worried about they would keep falling off every single time I try to put the cap on. But that's basically what Neil Armstrong would look like with the Snoopy cap, short of maybe obviously going in there and adjusting the strap. Which, again, like the easiest thing I've noticed, and according to the instructions, would probably be to take the head off. And then you could take the strap and fit it around his chin before you snap it back in place. I just can't seem to do that, though. I guess while we actually do have Neil here, I will just take the cap off for a second. Did want to show you guys what his head sculpt looks like. Historically, I feel like it does land a pretty good likeness. Oh, I see what it did there. Landing a good likeness of Neil Armstrong. It's based, of course, on the first moon landing. I think they've done a really nice job. I don't know if we ever will get another version of Neil Armstrong, maybe not necessarily in a spacesuit, but I think if anyone would want to be collecting a Neil, they probably would want to be getting it, though, in his spacesuit. So again, a nice looking head sculpt overall. For the rest of his outfit, though, the Eagle X A7L spacesuits, making sure I get that all in there, does have, of course, some really nice decorative, historically accurate, like the American flag, for example, has got the Armstrong name tag there on the front, NASA off to the side. It's a good padded figure. It does have, just by the nature of having so much padding like this, it makes for a little more of a heavier figure than standard 6-scale figures we've gotten from the company before. You've got some really nice metallic red that's added to the rim here of what will be his helmet place. Again, a nice looking figure. Now, again, his backpack will essentially be going onto the back, and then we'll have to kind of feed everything around and connect those in place. It's kind of really intricate the way that we're going to be doing this in a second. But again, I just did want to spend some time showing you guys what the figure looks like before we start adding the things that we're about to add. So if we want to get on, for example, his regular clear dome, it comes basically in two parts. You get a back part and you get a front part. And to know which one is which, this one has a blue on the back of it. And obviously, he's not going to be seeing where he's going to be able to go. So that's going to go on the back of the collar piece. This is going to go onto the front. So what we may want to do first is take the headpiece. We'll just take the Snoopy cap here, and we'll just kind of get it over top of his head. Now, I know realistically, I don't have this. I'm not going to have this completely strapped around his chin. So we'll have to kind of just leave it the way it is right now. What we'll then do, though, and I noticed this was probably the easiest way to do this, if you look at the pieces, the back piece has only one narrow peg. See that? This one here on the front actually does have two. When you do put them in, don't put them in like this. Kind of put them in more on an angle and then meet them in the middle. So we'll take like the back head piece, for example, and we'll just kind of fit it in on an angle like that, and that'll sit down. Take then the front piece and again put it in on an angle. Want to make sure, of course, the strap's out of the way here. Put it in on an angle, and then you want to meet the two in the middle. Here's one issue I also have with this figure. Isn't just the Snoopy cap alone. When you take these two pieces and put them together, there is a tab piece right there, and there's a little lip. For all intents and purposes, these should, though, attach together. And when you feel like you do get them snapped together, I think it's just by the fact that they're actually sitting inside the collar. I can never get them closed properly. Every time I do think that I get it closed, which again is like, see right there, you can see already what ends up happening. It ends up forcing the two pieces together. Now, I normally would have been able to go in there and maybe fight the two and force them together. Being that we're also dealing with clear plastic and a dome, structurally, I would imagine it'd probably be something that would crack if you're putting too much pressure against this. So again, like, while it works for the most part, I can't get the dome pieces completely together. I haven't had as much of an issue when it comes to his main external headpiece, but when it comes to these, I can't get the two together because they feel like they fight with one another. So you get them two together and the other side pops off. At the beginning of this video, when I had this spinning around on the rotisserie, I had the dome pretty good, but it doesn't seem like it should attach. I feel like almost, if anything, they probably could have done away with these tab pieces altogether and just had that sitting inside the collar, and that might have made things a little bit easier to keep the dome together. So we'll take those off. I know not much luck there. We'll take also the cap off too, and we'll just put this down here for a second. Now, Neil has, of course, his backpack, which I've kind of just kept off to the side here just because it was taking up so much space. The backpack does have Velcro, so you can open it up, although it doesn't really open up necessarily where you'd be able to remove the pack inside. It doesn't look like, from what I can see at least, that means maybe you could take the bottom off, but again, like, it's just a lot of Velcro straps here. Yeah, I think if you remove all of these, you would be able to slide the pack out completely, which I don't know if is going to have anything really sculpted inside or if it's just going to be a block of plastic. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it wants to come out. It may be a way to get that all out, but I'm just going to leave it because I don't want to start messing around with it. So we'll just get the straps back all in place. Fold this flap down as well, and the one on the other side as well. You can see it's got the labels there. It's got NASA down below here. Of course, if I got this right side up, the American flag. Now, there's a lot going on here. Quite a lot to really set up when it comes to the figure. You're going to have to take the hook pieces here on the top. You have to take the hook pieces that are on the sides here. And this will have to harness to the front of his body. And these will harness to the bottom of the body. Does that make sense? Don't worry, we'll kind of go through all that together. So, first of all, take the top of the backpack, and the most important thing is obviously making sure that you've got the American flag facing the right way. Flip it around. And these are actually curved plastic pieces, but there's not much give to them. So you sort of want to take the backpack here, take the top of the straps, and you just fit them around his shoulders. It doesn't have to be perfect right away. It will be perfect soon, though. And then what we need to do is we need to take the front of his piece here, of his suit. You need to unvelcro this. And when you lift this up, now you've got a clip piece. So the way that the clip works is, remember those little hooks we were looking at earlier? The hooks actually hook onto, which may not be an easy thing to do here. Take the hook, and you just hook it onto the front of the belt loop. Now, you want to kind of make sure that the loop is more front in the middle. If it's front and center, it may make things a little bit easier for it to hold in place. There's the one. And again, we'll just kind of bring the other one around here. You have to kind of balance these back and forth. When one gets clipped in place, you have to kind of stretch this across, making sure it's a little tight then on this side. And then you take the other belt piece, and you clip it in place. Did we get that? I don't think we got that. Something you'll find actually is easier to do if it's a little bit closer to you. Once this is now hooked in place, you can take the bottom half of the Velcro piece, and then you'll bring the bottom part and you'll just bring it around, and it'll attach onto this Velcro strip right here. And now that'll kind of keep everything hooked in place. For these, what you'll do, now again, these are the front parts of the straps. These need to hook onto this little ring right here. So just again, bring this around. These are actually the easier to do of the 4 hooks. And again, those just latch in place like that. The last thing you'll need to do is just bring Armstrong's arms out like this. And then you've got these connecting hoses. You don't have to necessarily match them to color, but if you look at the back of the pack, though, you can see that there's blue, there's red, and if you kind of match them accordingly to that. So there's the blue peg, and it'll go into the blue front. And when you attach these, you want to have them with the larger side facing forward. They'll just plug in place like that. Just rinse and repeat the steps, plug it in like that, and the final one is this one down here. Now, as I'm doing this on one side, I'm sure you couldn't help but notice that there's also a strap that doesn't have any connecting plug on that. What's that for? That's actually for the camera. We'll get to that in a second. This side doesn't have as many connecting pegs. It actually only has 2. So you can plug this one here. Actually, this one I think goes to the top. There's one in the middle that usually is missing. And then you'll take the red one, just bring it around. There's more than enough slack, so you don't have to worry that these are going to be overly tight, and that'll plug in place just like that. They almost, by the way that they attach, feel like they're attached by magnets, but I don't think that they are. The last thing this is, the extra strap is, that's actually for the camera. So we'll just kind of get Neil to stand here for a second, and let's just look at the camera here. So the camera consists of 3 parts. You got the main pack piece, and when you're looking at the pack, so it's going to be essentially facing this way here. This is the part that's going to latch onto those little hook pieces. If you look at the side of it, each of them individually have a little hook. So they'll again hook onto those little latches right there. What you'll do though also is you'll take this piece, and the piece itself, I want to make sure I've got this facing the right way. So the camera's going to be facing this way. So this is the part that has to be at the bottom. Take this, and this has to slide along the bottom. Just kind of bring its way all the way up. I don't feel like you have to have it all the way. Even if you have it about there, it's just fine. Then he also comes included, of course, with his camera. Now the camera, you can either have him holding it in hand, or you can have it mounted on the front of his suit. If you choose to have it, though, the latter, what you'll do, though, is there's a, see that right there, there's a little ledge on the side of the camera, and the piece that we just left behind here, that's going to slot along the bottom like that. And now the camera's not going to go anywhere. It's pretty nice and stable. Take the camera piece, and the camera now is going to latch onto those little, so there's a, see there's a little bar right there and a bar right there. If you don't get it on completely, it's okay. Even if you just get one on, it seems to hold it okay. And now he's good to go. I mean, the only thing left to really do then is look at the actual external helmet that he also wears as well. Now this is all attached. On the front of it here is Velcro. You don't have to even use the Velcro. It actually just fits fine over top of his head just the way it is right now. You don't have to, you know, unstrap anything. But when you're looking at it, it actually has a couple of different domes to it. So if you look at the main one here, or the primary, this comes down. All of them slide down, by the way. And you've got the front clear dome. If you want to have also the solar, I think it's the solar preventing dome, basically so he's not going to have the sun's rays shining directly at him. The actual gold dome, if you just take the top of this here as well, this also slides down independently as well. Now, while I'm doing this, you may have also noticed that these come down too. These, I guess, are also reflective guards. These can independently slide up if you choose. You can just leave them down altogether if you want to, but that's basically what it's going to look like. You can see a reflective surface there of me. So basically what you'll do then is just take that. That'll fit on top of Neil Armstrong's head like that. And now you got yourself the finished figure. Short of obviously just attaching onto the flag and having him displayed along with that. For me, at least, when it comes to displaying this guy, I'm more likely to display him with the dome like this and not necessarily have him with the previous dome that we looked at before. Of course, both of them can easily come up also as well, and the figure can be displayed any which way really that you want. Now, for the figure's articulation, this might be a little bit harder to do, and truth be told, I probably should have almost even looked at this before we started adding these things. So let's just take the camera off here carefully. We'll put that off to the side. Maybe even also, too, we'll just remove the helmet, and we'll put it also off to the side. For Neil Armstrong's articulation, it's pretty good considering he's got so much going on here. He's so self-contained with his own suit. The head's going to be on a ball joint. So if you're looking at it, the head and the neck are actually one piece. So when you're moving one, you have to move the other. But again, the head's going to rotate, for the most part, all the way around. It's going to look up about that high, and it's going to look down. I mean, up and down is probably going to be a little bit more where the limitations are for the figure. It's also going to rock back and forth also as well. The figure's arms, just by how much padding he has, he gets to about a 45-degree angle bend. Anything after that, you sort of feel like there's a lot of resistance working on the figure, and especially right here, when you start to bring the figure's arms out, you really feel there's tightness starting to develop just on his underarms. So I wouldn't maybe bring them any further than that for the risk that it could start to split the seams. The arms do move forward, they move back. There's a swivel there at the top of the bicep section there. The figure now, it's hard to really see how much articulation this guy actually has in his elbow. I would believe he'd only have just a single hinge, but he almost seems like he'd be able to bend more than just what a single hinge would afford him. Of course, the hands themselves do rotate, whether you want to use the gloved hands or you want to use just his regular Armstrong arms. The upper torso is going to be on a bit of a ball joint, but again, like there's a lot going on here. So, just tread cautiously when it comes to moving things, especially when it comes to his top of his torso. Legs split out about that far. They go forward, they go back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh, but again, like there's a lot of padding here underneath the suit. There is also a bend at the knee, possibly even a double bend. And again, for surprisingly how contained his boots are, and that these are made of plastic, he does pretty good for himself when it comes to the articulation there in his boots. All in all, though, like a true tribute to Neil Armstrong. I mean, again, when it comes to displaying this guy on the shelf, the shameful thing about him is as good as a likeness as Starry's had provided him. You know what? Where's his display stand? Let's get his display stand here going. For as good of a likeness, I think that they landed, there I go saying it again, for getting a Neil Armstrong to look like this. In the end, I might just end up displaying him on the shelf along with his helmet. Because again, like I do think, like when I think of space, I tend to obviously think of that iconic scene where he's out at the flag, and of course the dome is down like this. That's probably going to be the way I'm going to be displaying the figure, which again is a bit of a shame to say that because of how good and how much time they spent to make Neil Armstrong in the first place. As I was about to head over to the rotisserie, it just dawned on me I didn't actually show you guys where that other hose actually attaches onto. So if we go back to the camera here and you look on the side, see there's a silver post right here. If you look at the part that doesn't actually have a connecting peg, this has a little hole in the tube, and you'll take the hole and it slides just onto that antenna, just like that. And then, of course, that will just attach onto the front of his frame like that. You want to make sure, of course, those are securely attached. And then, again, that's what the camera looks like. I was kind of just jumping right over to the turntable and thinking right away that I had covered off all the territory. And sure enough, I knew I was going to forget something. But I did want to show you guys how to connect the camera in case you were curious. For your 411, if you want to mark this on your calendar, this Star-Ace Neil Armstrong Deluxe figure is looking to arrive on Earth anywhere from February to March 2025. So within the next month or so. The Deluxe version, though, that was provided by Star-Ace, that includes both the American flag and the soil sampling device, is at least here in Canada going to be going for $471.16. If you are looking, though, to buy that in US dollars, it's going to be a little less than that. If you don't necessarily need the American flag, though it's just as iconic as the first landing on the moon, you can also go the route of the normal version. That's not going to have the flag. It's not going to have the soil sampling device, but it will still, though, have the hammer. Neil Armstrong is a fantastic looking figure. Again, though, mentioning in this review, it's a shame, though, that I really will want to display this guy on the shelf, not showing off his face, because they've spent just as much time to carefully sculpt and paint the face as they did to craft the outfit that he wears. Now, of course, the outfit does have some meticulous aspects to it. Attaching him onto his body isn't necessarily the biggest issue. I had actually more of an issue trying to attach the Snoopy cap onto his head. From the instructions, at least, it looks like the head can be removed from the rest of his body. I didn't really want to fight it too much because it seemed like there was a little bit of resistance. Had, though, I been able to remove the head, I think I'd probably be able to strap the cap around his head a little bit easier. I still, though, had an issue, though, trying to attach the two halves of the glass dome, even though they're not glass, they're plastic. The front half and the back half, for all intents and purposes, should fit inside the collar, which they do, but then to take the front half and the back half and snap them together, I feel like if I'm putting too much pressure, there could be a risk that I'm going to crack the dome. Maybe if I put a little bit more pressure, I'd be able to attach the two halves better than what I did. Again, a big thank you to the folks over at Star Ace that did provide this sample of the brand new Neil Armstrong 1/6 scale figure that we had the chance to have a look in this review. What do you guys think of this guy? Let me know down below in the comments section. Is this one that you guys could see yourselves picking up, or is he a pass? Let me know what you guys think of the figure down below. If you guys also did enjoy this video, you can do it a solid and throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. You can hit that subscribe. You can turn on that bell. You can, of course, come back. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.